Welcome to One Up Fantasy, helping you one up the fantasy football competition. For the latest in Chicago sports news, visit ChiCitySports.com. And now, here are the hosts of One Up Fantasy, Stephen Johnson and Chris Jackle. Kaboom!
What is up, One Up crew? Welcome in to another episode of One Up Fantasy from Chi City Sports and the Tape Never Lies Network. I'm Stephen Johnson. He is Chris Jackle. And Chris, we are finally through the preseason. We are through cuts, and we are ready for some actual football. We have less than 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks. A week from Thursday. We're finally talking actual football. I'm pumped.
I'm giddy. I don't know what to do with myself. I just can't contain myself, but this is amazing. Drafts are happening every day, every hour for some of us, those, those backdoor channel drafts some people are doing on here. But yeah, almost a week till we're kicking off and seeing what the hell's happening on the football side. But fantasy, there's a lot of things happening, and we got to get to it today, man. I mean, we saw some shockwaves going through the NFL with some cuts, some minor ones, some big ones, but I feel like we're going to talk it up or chop it up today. What do you say?
Absolutely. We've got to talk about the NFL cut day, as well as some injuries that have happened since the last time we talked to everybody last Tuesday evening, including another running back going down. What that means, I know there are plenty of rosters out there who felt the impact of one J.K. Dobbins going down, and not too great, but hey, here we are, and that's the beauty of the game is you never know what it's going to throw at you, and heck, I mean, that's the argument that a lot of people will make. You never draft too early. You got to draft closer
Absolutely.
To the season. This is the heat of the redraft season as we know it. So very excited to get things moving and help you one up the fantasy football competition in your league. So we've got to get over some notes, and then we will be joined by the one, the only Jordan Vanek,
the
4for4 Football, Awesomeo. He's working with FTN. He's working with Rumboyz Fantasy Network. He is all over the place. A fantastic young mind when it comes to the DFS game. He's going to help us fill out a week 1 DFS roster on DraftKings and hopefully raise some money for charity in the process to get things moving there to kick off the season, because we're committing a cardinal sin in starting a DFS lineup more than a week ahead of games. But hey, it's all for a good cause. Exactly. Can't win if you don't play. I feel like I'm playing the charity all over again. But hey,
oh boy, Cars need some positivity. He's tired of all that negativity on the other show. Everyone's yelling at each other. People are getting upset. But it's good to have a little camaraderie and kumbaya. Apparently,
that it is. So let's dive right into it. We'll talk to start things off. NFL cut day coming up in a second. But first, like we said, J.K. Dobbins is now out for the year. Knee injury sets him out. Makes you wonder, why play the starters the last preseason game? Might want to reserve your guys, make sure they're going to stay healthy. But here we are, and the Ravens getting knocked big time on the offensive side of the ball. Now, Gus the Bus Edwards leading the pack in that Ravens backfield was looked at as one of the better handcuffs in the NFL prior to the weekend slate of the last preseason games. And now we're talking about a guy, barring any kind of signing, that could be flirting in that RB2 category, maybe even higher, given the fact of how much the Ravens rely on that rushing game. In your mind, what round, what range do you consider Gus Bus, a potential fantasy pick in redraft leagues.
It's interesting. I just actually came from a draft and he was sitting there in the 4th round and I was like, wow, it's nice to see. He ended up going in the 5th, which I thought he was gonna be more mid-round even with the injury. I mean, I just figured they're going to unleash Lamar more than hand it off to Gus, but last year Gus wasn't bad. I mean, he rushed for almost 750 yards. I think he had like 6 touchdowns. He was a guy that when JK was a beast and he was kind of under the radar, not really under the radar. I mean, he averaged like 6 yards a carry, but at the same point, I mean, at the same time, Gus is a guy they haven't gone out and signed anybody, and that's telling. If they were that concerned, they've had a week almost. It's been a week actually, like you said, Tuesday night, and they haven't ran out and grabbed some of the guys that are available. Maybe they're waiting for cuts today to see if there's anybody that they truly want to grab. But I mean, I'd be happy with Gus, getting him in the 5th or 6th round. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, he's like a running back 25 is what I've been seeing right now. He has jumped up obviously considerably, with respect to those rankings, but I just, there's still, if your draft is right now, there's just you don't know. It's a tough call, but if you can get him in the mid round, I wouldn't be disappointed. Even if they grabbed a veteran, because he's going to be the RB1 there. Even if they grab, we can talk about those guys after you give your pontification here. But what do you think about Gus?
It's interesting. I mean, he really is a model of consistency. If you look at his 3 years in the league so far, 718 yards, 711 yards, 723 yards in his first 3 years in the NFL. And it makes you wonder, like, okay, like the consistency is there. Even the touches per game and the rushing opportunities per game, it has stayed so balanced in his first 3 years, and he's carried it out so well in the time that he's been a pro. Rookie year, 5.2 yards a carry. Sophomore season, 5.3 yards a carry. And then last year, 5 yards a carry. And then they come back and they reward him with a brand new 2-year deal. I think there are a lot of people that are kind of fading him back because they're not really seeing the full picture. And they're like, okay, there's going to be another guy there.
It's going to be a shoot or drop, right?
Right, and especially a back that has receiving ability, because that currently is not there, and that is not Gus Edwards. He has 18 career receptions. 18 in 3 years. That ain't good.
22 targets. Yeah. I mean, they're not looking to throw him the ball at all, I mean, that's not good.
Exactly. But, I mean, you think about that offense as a whole. It's not an offense that relies on Lamar Jackson dumping the ball down to his running backs in the passing game, because Lamar Jackson is able to roll out of the pocket, take care of things, and obviously that's how he racks up all of these rushing opportunities himself. I'm seeing, Carr's comment here, could end up with over 1,500 yards. I mean, hell, I don't even know what could possibly happen or where the ceiling exactly is.
Focal point on Lamar just going.
Exactly. It's going to be crazy to see just how much. And if he can stay healthy for 17 games, at some point, I have this fear he is just going to get rocked, and it's not going to be good whatsoever. But until that does happen, they're going to continue to lean on him. But you can't count out Gus Edwards, especially on the goal line. Should have some fantastic opportunities there. Again, he's a 5 yards per carry back. You cannot ignore that. And if you give him more carries, again, his career high right now is 144 for a season. So that's less than 10 a game. Yeah. If you give him, say, 15 rushes a game, that's putting up a pretty serious amount of yardage, given where his career stats are and where you can project him at. I'm honestly in that same range as you, that 4 to 5 range. I lean even more towards the 4. Fade him a little bit further back in PPR leagues, half PPR, standard. I don't know why you play standard, but whole nother story. Gus Bus up and above and away. Let him have his day, because it's finally getting his talent on the field more often than it has thus far in his 3 years as a pro.
Now, let me ask you a question. I mean, there are guys just in that range, since we're talking about that fourth round, that tier. I'm going to name a couple guys for you. Just curious on what you think. Myles Gaskin, Chase
Gus Bus.
Edmonds. Okay.
Gus Bus all the way on both of them.
Damian Harris.
Oh, I love Damian Harris, especially now that Mac Jones is in New England. I'm still going to say Gus Bus.
Kareem Hunt.
Oh, see, that's the
the
one
line right there. Because the next guy. What about Darrell Henderson?
I like Henderson more because he has the pass catching ability.
The next tier up is like Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery. So those, so he falls right in that fourth tier, if you will. So right around 16 to 20 in the rankings. I was just pulling it off of, but I've seen rankings anywhere between, what was it, 18 to 29, what I was looking at this afternoon, for RB rankings, so he's somebody that could be a beast. But if they go out and get somebody that's going to snipe some carries, you hope that he ends up, kind of hoping to show his worth throughout the season, where he ends up stacking, and he gets those 15 carries, like you're saying, and if you're averaging not 5 yards, but 4.5, we could do the math and, figure that out. But that's, that's over 1,000 yards this year. And that's not bad. I mean, it's not great, but it's not bad. And I know I'd be happy with that on my fantasy squad if he's getting those goal line carries like you're talking about.
Absolutely. He's got plenty of opportunity for the time being. We'll see what the next couple days do carry through here with guys shifting around. There's still quite a few vets still on the market. Tommy, yes, we are live.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a question back here? I got to scroll back through. I'm a lifelong Bears fan after the camp cut. Okay, well, let's talk Cam Newton. Okay. Obviously, the surprising news of the day that Cam Newton is cut from New England.
Yeah.
I wasn't
My phone
entirely
got warm. I was surprised. All these alerts. Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't entirely surprised that Mac Jones beat out Cam Newton, but for Cam Newton to be cut is a whole different
He had to have asked, right? Like, I feel like, he's a consummate professional. He handled it with grace. Like, he didn't come out and, he didn't say anything derogatory about Joe. He didn't come out and bash anybody is what I'm getting at. But, right. He might have went to Belichick's like, look, if I'm not starting, let me get a shot to go somewhere else. There's some shitty fucking quarterbacks out there that I might be able to get, at least get some. Yeah, exactly. And there are some, there's some opportunity. Miami, he could go back up fucking Tua, and be their safety, insurance policy. Not that it's a good one, but it's better than nothing. Right.
Better than Jacoby Brissett. Maybe. I know there's some people that would argue with that.
He's been, but we're talking fantasy, right? So, but with that being said, Mac Jones, QB1 there, Bill Belichick having the cojones to showing Matt Nagy what it's like to be a head coach and say, what's best for our football team, or, that's another show.
But okay, just quickly though, Fields over Tomato. Yes, it should happen. Will it happen? No. Yeah. But allow the Tomato to get murdered on Sunday Night Football. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. Tommy, we're live. We answered. Welcome to the show. We're here every Tuesday night at 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern. But with all that being said, I think the Patriots are going to get back to their old offense. I think that's one of the reasons why Belichick was, is so freaking excited. He's got a little double tight end set. He's going to, I think the tight end's value is going to go up personally. I feel that Jonnu and, if Hunter can ever get healthy, that's going to be a pretty nice little combo, but that's a big if. But they do have some other tight ends to use, while Hunter's out. But do you see them relying more on the run because Jones being the rookie and not as, just kind of getting caught up as we move along and the offense progresses? Or do you think how he's done already, during the preseason, he had the best quarterback rating out of any, I think, rookie quarterback. He was 36 for 52. Not bad. He looked pretty good. What do you think?
I mean, he did look like the consummate professional, like we discussed last week with Matt Waldman. He's that guy where, you have Nick Saban yelling at him to stop it. And he said, well, then stop it. Like, stop me from completing my passes, from doing what I am here to do. And again, it's amazing to see how quickly he has latched on to the pro game.
Yeah.
Maybe not entirely against starters, maybe having that kind of along the same lines as Justin Fields, where he wasn't starting the entire time in the preseason, but you still saw the flashes, you still saw the poise, you still saw what he could be in that offense led by Josh McDaniel. And again, here you are with a much similar situation to what's going on in Chicago. But for New England's sake, I believe this greatly heightens the ceiling of the running backs by far. Tight end wise, this kind of puts me on a plateau with Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. I mean, Cam Newton loved targeting the tight end position. Like that's what he did.
He couldn't throw the ball farther than 15 yards. So
and that's the other thing, because he was a fairly decent deep ball passer last year. Cam Newton was, and so Nelson Aguilar, it's kind of tough for him, especially that he lived off of that with Derek Carr last year in Las Vegas. And then you have Jacoby Myers, who continues to be one of the more consistent wide receivers that the Patriots have in camp. I think Jacoby Myers gets a bump. I think the running backs overall get a bump because Cam Newton's not stealing those rushes anymore. But I'd cap it at about that in terms of who gets the pluses in that offense.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mac Jones just kind of brings them back, like you said, to Josh McDaniels being super pumped about what he gets to use and utilize in that offensive scheme, and that speaks pleasantries to our fantasy ears, if you will, and it's just a good thing to hear. So don't be afraid to grab a running back if you see one that don't reach. There's some guys out there that you could probably, and. Stephen, is there anybody that you would be very comfortable with, in terms of the running back room, Damian Harris, James White, and Stevenson, I'm sorry. I know that's the 1, 2, and 3, but which one do you like the most out of those three this year?
I mean, I think it's Harris's backfield to roll. Yeah, I think it's Harris's backfield to roll with for the time being until things get moving. I am curious to see how they do get James White reinserted into that third down back role again. If it's going to be like it was 2 years ago, where he did finish as a top 25 running back in PPR formats, especially where he's going at now in the ADP, that could be a serious steal.
Great. Yeah, you're right.
So,
that's a good call.
Yeah, I really want to see how they're going to incorporate Stevenson, because I think that's going to be a really telling sign as well, to just how much of a backfield committee we're going to see, and kind of what we've been used to trying to navigate the Patriots backfield over the course of Bill Belichick's career in New England. It hasn't necessarily been something that we've been able to necessarily pinpoint by any means, but I mean, from you mentioned Damian Harris earlier with the Gus Bus comparisons. Where do you see Harris yourself in terms of a guy now that Mac Jones is the guy?
I actually don't disagree with you, and I want to, because it'd make for good fodder right now and make a little good banter. But I feel that it's pretty true where he's at right now. I think that it's the first time a Patriots running back in a few years where you can look at an RB1 and be comfortable, because normally New England, you just don't know what Bill's going to do. I think the wide receivers are something that are more of a concern. I think, I here in New England, the bubble is, that I'm in regarding the Patriots, they love Stevenson, running back to the running backs real quick. But, Kendrick Bourne is another dude that gets a lot of talk over here as like the sleeper that they think is going to be the dude that can just run all over the field and do things that, that just is that New England Patriots umbrella that I'm under.
Patriots way.
Yeah. It's interesting, but sometimes that gets in my, you hear those things. And when I draft today, you see Patriots going so fucking high, and I love it. It's a dude, never mind. It's a long story, but yeah, you see a lot of Patriots going early out here in New England. It's pretty funny.
I bet. And renewed hype, I'm sure, today.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
They're all annoying again,
I'm sure you missed that
As
whole
a Bears
year.
fan, it's like, fuck. I'm like, it's great. We get Fields,
And
they
we're
get
back.
Jones, and it's like, all right, they got Cam still, and then it's like, oh Jesus, here we go. Now your coach can't even start Fields. Look at you, big pussy. Like, oh, sorry, fart. It's like, oh yeah, you're probably right. But anyway, I digress.
Pain.
Yeah, sorry to curse.
Pain. Hey, it's all good. It's all good. Got to get the anger out at
That's
some
what the
point,
Bears
right?
do to me,
Exactly. Well, talking about Cam Newton, we actually have a Panthers fan that's sitting in the green room here and going to talk some daily fantasy with him. If you're new to the daily fantasy game or just want to get some tips and tricks to the game, we're going to break all that down, maybe get his thoughts on Cam Newton as well to kick things off here. But how about we bring him in now, shall we?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Let's roll.
He is a DFS writer for 4for4 Football. You can catch him live Tuesday mornings on Awesomeo, and he is a DFS analyst for Rumboyz Fantasy Network, as well as doing some work for FTN, Fade the Noise. He's all over the place. I don't think there's enough places to list off here to collect them all.
But the imagery of his resume or his account, where he's working right now on the screen. So,
Here we are. It is the one, the only Jordan Vanek. Welcome in, sir.
I appreciate you guys having me on. I mean, I love to get on right after you guys mentioned Cam Newton is cut. Yes, as a Panthers fan, it hurts because Cam is still the dude who got me obsessed with football, and like it sucks to see an athlete of that caliber just like completely fall off the cliff because of injuries. Like Cam today is not the MVP Cam, and I know that. And I was hoping that they would utilize both of them. And then obviously Max just going to take over. He was way better in the preseason. It wasn't even close.
Yeah,
it was
to say the least. I mean, Cam had what, like 8 passing touchdowns last year? I think.
Yeah,
something
heard. It was bad. And if people are like, oh, the Panthers should have kept Cam Newton instead of Teddy Bridgewater, and it's like, did you see him? I don't
watch anything.
I don't like him. I mean, either way, both of the teams, the Patriots and the Panthers, Devontae Adams caught more receiving touchdowns than we threw touchdowns last year. So not a fun
twist the knife. Thinking about all these comparison stats, it's very easy to twist the knife. So question here before we dive into the DFS thing. Do you believe that if you had to choose today, where do you think Cam falls? Where do you think he signs? Does he sign with anybody?
Man, with the vaccination status, that's kind of the thing that I don't think teams are going to, sign him for that reason. But if I had to say there's one owner in the world that doesn't seem to care about anything besides being the guy that's right, and it's the Dallas Cowboys with Jerry Jones. I think that's the only, for me, that's the situation I see. Because like people will say Washington, but they didn't want him last year.
Yeah, right. I had a shot. No, true.
They decided, let's go Kyle Allen and Dwayne Haskins or Alex Smith coming off the leg injury instead of Cam Newton for $1 million. Not ideal.
Yeah, I mean, Cooper Rush doesn't leave a lot to be desired as terms of a backup quarterback in Dallas. So it's not a terrible landing spot, especially with, if Cam Newton can stay accurate on the deep ball. I'm sure Amari Cooper would welcome that with open arms, as well as CeeDee Lamb would as well.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm curious to see where he does indeed land, because it could turn into a disaster and a half for fantasy players, especially if they're banking on certain things, and if he falls into the certain situation. Man, it would be wild, to say the least. So
an interesting point by George, though. Saints, possible landings. They could put Taysom Hill back in that utility role. You have Cam as that back. They have him as the backup quarterback. Could be interesting. Food for thought.
Well, I mean, Taysom's been arguing that he wants out if he doesn't want to start. He's made those comments. So enough dominoes fall. Anything could possibly happen, to say the least.
What about Miami or Houston, or there's some other team?
Houston could use them. We all know that.
But But with the whole vaccination thing, it's definitely a problem.
It's
Teams
tough.
are, you're seeing it now, the 5-day rule where guys have to, any kind of close contact, they got to sit out 5 days, or if you don't do this, you got to sit out 5 days. And he screwed himself in New England. At the end of the day, Mac Jones got 5 straight days with the ones and a great look with everybody. And it sounded like he just, went to town.
All he needed.
Yeah, exactly.
All
the rest
he needed.
is history.
So we're going to go into some DFS here with Jordan. Again, I know, Jordan, you've tried teaching me DFS. We've talked about this. I'm not sure how much I've gained or remembered in my memory from this. So this is going to be kind of a refresher for me and for everybody else that may be new to the fantasy game and the daily game on DraftKings or FanDuel it seems like they're popping up all over the place now, but here we are. So let's start off with do's and don'ts, especially for newer players and newer strategies. Let's say, we'll start here. There's all the different games that are out there. There's your head-to-head. I'm going to let you go through them all because they're a hell of a lot better at explaining them than I am. But in terms of newer players, in terms of getting into the space, what's the best way to kind of dip your toe in? Why? And, what's the whole setup there in your mind for a beginner player?
So for me, it's, finding the right people to follow and kind of get game theory and like strategy on. Like me, I'm a tournament player. I don't play cash games. And the difference between cash and tournament is like cash will be a head-to-head or a 3-man contest where third person wins whatever you guys are betting. And there's like 50-50 games. So like say there's 100 people in the pool, you're betting $25 on your lineup. If you come in the top 50, you make $50. Like stuff like that are more cash oriented. While a tournament, it'll be a few thousand people and there will be top 20% of people make the money. And usually the first place lineup will have 20% of the prize pool or some sort of it. So like DraftKings is doing the first week where they have a crazy tournament where it's a $5 first place is $1 million, but there's like 1.4 million people in the contest, I believe, or entries, I should say.
Good odds.
And on top of like tournaments, you have different contest selection. So like the $5 tournament, someone can take $750 and make 150 different lineups and throw 150 lottery tickets. Like that's what it would be like. For me, I recommend highly single entries. That's the best way to get your foot in the door. And there's a beautiful $12 single entry for a tournament where first place is a good amount of money, which would be like $5,000. There's about, I think it's like 3,000, 4,000 people in it. And it's a single entry. You all have even odds. It's not you versus some dude who has $1 million and can just make 150 lineups. It's you versus everybody's one lineup. So that's the contest I recommend more than anything.
Is I feel like every time we see screenshots on social media, like, oh, I hit it big. We're seeing like 50 things on a single line. It's like, oh, I don't have that kind of money to do that kind of stuff, let alone make the right choices, I guess is the best way to put it. So in terms of do's and don'ts of setting a lineup, what is the most important advice you can give to start setting those players and to start selecting those players?
First thing is understand you will not get everybody. You're not going to have everybody. It's just it's not going to happen. Early on in the year, don't really care too much about your salary. Don't look into, oh, I can switch this. Early on, the prices aren't good. Like it's a known fact where early on we don't know what's going to happen. Like for example, Randall Cobb for the Packers is 3,400. Aaron Rodgers seems like the guy that's, hey, I'm going to make you trade for this guy, and then against the Saints, he's going to get 8 catches for 80 yards and score. DraftKings, he's going to get bumped up to 50 or 5,300-ish next week just because he's just going to get the volume because like things kind of change as the season goes on where some guys are bad, some guys are good. You have injuries that happen where thankfully the only thing that was really on the slate was James Robinson with Travis Etienne. Like J.K. Dobbins is a Monday night game, so that's avoided. And Cam Akers happened so early that Daryl Henderson's on the Sunday night game, so that's avoided as well. But so salary remaining, and then for what I usually look for is like making the lineup and then looking at it as a whole. It doesn't make sense. Like I usually like to have a stack in the game in my lineup, and with this stack, I usually try to get a player on the opposite team in situations that it makes sense. So, for example, if the Packers are playing the Vikings, I know this is a Bear show. This is just the first example I thought off the top of my head.
Thanks, Jordan.
if I could go Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and run it back with Dalvin Cook, I'll do it. Because last year that was a beautiful stack to play because they usually all played well in the game.
Well, yeah.
Or you could go with the Bills and the Cardinals last year where you go, I want Josh Allen, Diggs, and Cole Beasley, and then run it back with DeAndre Hopkins. That line, those four players combined for like 130 points that game. It's important to like your lineup has to make sense to a T because like if you're playing random players and one guy, like it's just not going to work. Like you need your quarterback with a receiver because it just makes sense. It's not going to be necessarily optimal because like I've seen weeks where random stuff kind of happens where I think it was last year the Falcons or Russell Wilson scored like 35 or 40, but it's because Chris Carson caught 2 touchdowns. So like it was playing Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, but not DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Even though they played pretty well, it just wasn't optimal, but it gives you the highest chance to actually win when you play a stack.
Now, is that like your golden standard, though? One of the things you always try to do? You try to do that stat? Okay. Yeah. It seems like a pretty good idea, you know? So you just look for that good matchup. You're following the trends, doing what you do best. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you're kind of describing my game to a T here, where I just play a bunch of random players and hope they hit.
You beat me to it.
I'm what you call a donator, apparently.
That's fucking doing this stupid shit. And this guy's like, "Oh, do a stat." I'm like, "That's a fucking great idea." No wonder why I have $7 in my DraftKings account right now.
And I mean, another thing I'll add to it is paying attention to Vegas over-unders. Vegas knows a little bit, and like early on, they're guessing. Like I don't care what anybody tells me, they are definitely guessing at this point. They have historical data and whatever, but the reality is we have no idea who's really that good. I remember week 1 2 years ago, the Ravens-Dolphins game was over-under was like 44. The Ravens had 48 by themselves, and it was just straight Lamar Jackson just putting on an absolute clinic. So things like that can happen, and with the is there value in looking in injury reports? Yes, but I mean it's not do or die. Like injury reports that sway a certain team tremendously is important. Where last year Lane Johnson got tested positive for COVID, or one of those COVID incidents got ruled out 45 minutes before the slate. Washington's defense was 2,100. I was like, okay, they're locked in because Chase Young against whoever, Andre Dillard, and I'm like, yep, this is perfect. And the funny thing is I played Dallas Goedert as a tight end with the Washington football defense. It worked because the Washington defense, like defenses, you want turnovers, you want sacks. You don't care necessarily if they give up, like if they can give up 20 points, but they get a pick 6, your defense most likely made it in terms of value.
Yeah.
So, talking, aside from injuries, are there other signs that you look for in gravitating towards certain players and certain teams when you're setting your lineups, aside from kind of seeing those stacks and getting, say, a quarterback, wide receiver, and then, like you said, a situation where it's like Rodgers, Adams, and then Cook on the other end? Is there anything else that you kind of tie in and say, okay, this makes a lot of sense?
Yes. So last year of the week that I'll kind of give the ideology behind some of the things that I do, I was tracking how many points teams were giving up to like tight ends when the tight end actually received like 3 to 4 targets. 4 or more targets. Because if a tight end goes out there and gets 1 target, like for example, Blake Jarwin, random tight end, that goes into the average against that defense's position. But when you actually factor in, like, okay, like, for example, Darren Waller against the Jets was the auto lock for me last year, because if you go back and actually look at the games where they played either like a Kelsey or they played, the tight ends actually got targets. Like the Dolphins tight ends combined for like 27 DraftKings points against the Jets in one game. And then the next time they played them, the same thing happened. And I'm like, it's Darren Waller. Like, I know the tight ends for the Dolphins aren't Darren Waller and like people target them.
But like
Waller's a beast. Yeah, like Waller's a different breed, and it's not like they had to pay attention to a receiver for the Dolphins at the time. The Jets were just very bad against tight ends. So that week, going into it, Kelsey wasn't on the slate. So I was like, okay, well, Waller's the top tight end. My projections I kind of put together, Waller was projected 24 for me, and the next closest tight end was TJ Hawkinson for 11. And I was like, this is an obvious advantage. I'm just playing in Waller. I got lucky in the sense that Waller had the greatest tight end performance in the last like 20 years, where he went for, I think, like 200 yards. But my thought process was he was going to outscore the next tight end by like 12. He did it by like 30. So that's like that definitely was me getting more so lucky on that side of it. But the idea behind it was
you still played the number there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you a quick question. Sorry, Stephen. I just, every year, it's daily fantasy for a reason, but has there ever been a player that you would have seemed to find on your roster consistently? It's like, you almost drafted this guy on your team. It's maybe just kind of like a silly question, but I mean, there's such great players, but was there like Devontae Adams or, not even Patrick Mahomes, but is there any particular player that you seem to either love or just always drafted,
So each year is one in its own. And it's actually funny that you mentioned that, because like 2018, if you fit in Christian McCaffrey and Michael Thomas in your lineup somehow that year, and Lamar Jackson, if you fit those three in every single Sunday when they were playing, you killed it. Okay. They were above and beyond better than every single player every week. They were so consistent. The pricing, like McCaffrey at 10K, and I was like, he was still optimal, which is just mind-boggling. But like, I mean, for me, it really depends. Like, there's players that I'm super high on. Like last year, Devontae Adams was my wide receiver one going into the year over Michael Thomas, just because I kind of saw it's Aaron Rodgers and it's Devontae Adams and nobody else. And like Drew Brees' arm was just dying more and more each year. So I was early on Devontae Adams, and I played him a ton early. But once pricing kind of caught up, and also last year, like, there were other receivers that were playing really well, I went to them eventually.
Okay. Yeah, well, so in terms of these different positions, and I know we discussed this previously, but in terms of fading, in terms of getting these guys at 10,000, even if again Christian McCaffrey is going to be optimal again. I mean, people in just regular redraft leagues are treating him like a cheat code at the 101 just because of just how much more he scores against other running backs. But again, in order to do that at $10,000 and $50,000 to work with, you're gonna hurt somewhere. What positions are best for fading in DFS?
So this is mainly a DraftKings point of view for me, because FanDuel pricing's a lot softer there, so you don't need to like really fade as hard. But for DraftKings specifically, it's funny. Last year, I played more Jordan Akins in the Jets defense than I did other teams, like in tight ends. I wasn't playing the Evan Ingram because he just never was good. Like, I'll take my like people kept paying up for Evan Ingram at like 4,400, and Jordan Akins was 2,500, and Jordan Akins with Deshaun Watson was getting like 5 to 6 points, and Evan Ingram was getting like 10. And that 2,000 salary remaining, I could go get my Devontae Adams. So last year specifically, it was tight end and the defense position, because I mean, it's crazy, but I played the Falcons defense when they played the Chiefs, because the Falcons they didn't make them 2K, they made them 1,900. I have never seen a defense be 1,900 in my entire time playing it. And I was like, they're just too cheap to pass on. And I mean, lo and behold, the Falcons held the Chiefs to 20 points, and I'm looking like a genius. And I'm like, I just played them because it made sense. Like, they're just so cheap not to pass up, because like, unless a defense scores 25 on a slate, the odds are they're sitting between 12 to 15. And like, if your defense gets you 8, it's only 7 points lost. Well, if you play the wrong quarterback and you'd go cheap there, and you miss out on the Mahomes 40-point week, it's not a good time.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's funny you mentioned the Falcons. We talked about Dan Quinn a little bit earlier today, and just how terrible of a defensive coordinator he is. But it's interesting to see, because I think for a lot of people, at least myself, more of the casual DFS players, the donators, that they look at those lower teams and they think, oh, that defense sucks. But in reality, you just can't look at it like that. And really, like you said, the same thing goes for tight end. You mentioned Akins. Right, I think it was that the year he had like 6 or 7 touchdowns too. So I mean, he was scattering them in there at a pretty healthy rate. But again, I feel like there's just a couple specific stats in terms of just the DFS stats, like the points per dollar or whatever. Yeah, I'm sure you have much more detailed numbers than I do on this, but that obviously make a lot more sense to setting these lineups.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, since you mentioned Dan Quinn, I'll go into some of the things. I went and did a kind of big data dive for some of my like draft or articles that I'll be doing with 4 for 4, and I wanted to see defensive coordinators in the most recent years, like who's giving up the most DraftKings points on average, tight end, stuff like that. So Dan Quinn, we'll go with him. He's the worst. He is actually the worst, and pretty much he's top 5 in every category, which is just not good at all. And like, I get it, the Falcons were bad, whatever, but when Raheem Morris came over, they changed drastically in a few positions of running back and tight end. And personally, I'm going to say, because I just believe that like the Falcons this year for week 1 against the Eagles, I'm playing them. I'm probably playing them most in my lineups, because Dean Pease is arguably one of the best coordinators in football. And I know the Falcons have been bad, but the style of play with Arthur Smith and slowing the pace down, it only takes 1 to 2 turnovers from Jalen Hurts. And like, let's not crown Jalen Hurts king yet. Like, let's not do that. But with Dan Quinn, we'll go in 61% of his games, he gives up over 20 points to the quarterback in DraftKings. Wow. In 35% of his games, it's over 25 for quarterbacks. The next closest, that's like, I guess, the next closest is the Bengals defensive coordinator with 32%. You have, after that, there's one with Lovie Smith was actually pretty high up there. No, sorry, Joe Woods, the Browns defensive coordinator last year. But on top of that, he's 19% of the running backs get over 25% or 25 points against him, which is astronomically high when the average is, the average is 9%. He's at double the average compared to the other defensive coordinators. And I mean, he's just bad at every bit of being the defensive coordinator.
Every major statistical category.
I mean, like that week 1, I'm so happy Tampa Bay is not on the slate. And trust me, that made me so happy, because I do not want to bother with that Cowboys Tampa Bay Bucks game. Because I would be like, well, I want to play Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, and Giovanni Bernard. It doesn't matter, any of them. Like, just play Tom Brady.
Just play the roster.
But you know you're still going to play a single game slate here and there for that Thursday night.
Yeah,
of course.
Exactly.
Come on, what are we doing?
I will play, and I will most likely going $5 and 1 Cowboy.
There you go.
Hey, as long as it works and it wins you some cash, it's all that matters, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, speaking of lineups, like I said, I know we're going to commit a cardinal sin here. That we're more than a week out from the Sunday slate, but we're going to do this throughout the season and set a lineup on DraftKings that will be playing for charity. And as our guest, you get to choose if this lineup does win any cash.
No pressure.
What charity we would like to give it to. And so who will we be playing for week 1?
The Children's Miracle Network will definitely be the one we're playing for. That's the charity that was with my fraternity, and that's the charity I'm sticking with.
All right. So you heard it here. It's CMN The Children's Miracle Network, some fantastic hospitals across the country. Chicago-wise, Lurie Children's Hospital, downtown Chicago, is a CMN hospital. They do fantastic work. If you have not checked out just everything that they're doing, highly recommend. It's eye-opening, to say the least, in the best way possible, in terms of just understanding what all goes into the work that CMN does with helping in child pediatrics. So, like I said, we're looking here, the $5 million one, the one we talked about earlier. There's over 1 million players
Mama
in
needs
this
a new
sucker,
pair of shoes.
but you got to pay to play, and we're going to do that here with a lineup. And so we just like to talk through here what you're thinking, what you've seen. I'm sure you're already neck deep in week 1 stats and research. It's never ending in the DFS world. So off the top, we'll just kind of roll straight down the line here from quarterback all the way to defense with our $50,000 in salary to roll. Who should the quarterback be for week number 1 in this charity lineup?
So normally I would say let's go plug in at his price currently, Aaron Rodgers, but with the Bakhtiari news about him starting out on the PUP, I am leaning away from Rodgers, and it does suck because Tannehill is on the COVID list. But the quarterback that I think will be viable because of his really, really, really low pricing is actually Sam Darnold. And I know I'm a Panthers fan and I'm a homer for it, but
You're talking
Jets,
value. No.
The
value,
Jets
Jordan
line is absolutely awful. And they just lost Carl Lawson for the year. They're trading for Shaq Lawson for week 1. But the Panthers, the only part of our team that I'm concerned with on offense is the O-line. But the Jets D-line can't take advantage of that. And the Sam Darnold revenge game is kind of upon us. So, and the first person I'm going to say let's pair Sam Darnold with is that guy sitting at the top, which this is what this will allow.
That makes it affordable, right?
All right. So
that's your stack right there.
That's
there
going to be the quarterback, running back, and we'll probably throw a receiver in there as well.
So to that end, I know we talked about stacks a little bit earlier. 2-player stacks versus 3-player stacks, or even 4 if it does make sense. Is there a safe landing spot in that stack land that you normally fall on? Is it more 2 than 3, more 3 than 2?
I prefer to go either. I mean, it depends on kind of the game. Like if you get like the Cardinals Bills where they can just kind of score, like you could see both of them being a complete shootout. Go for it. Like this is the type of game with Carolina and the Jets where I don't believe we need to run it back with someone, because J.C. Horn's going to go match up with Corey Davis, and I know Corey Davis has looked great in the preseason. It's now going to be against ones, and I know just J.C. Horn's a rookie, but he's going to do well against the big physical receivers and not necessarily the shiftier group. So for this type of slate and this type of stack, I just recommend going a 3-man Carolina stack over going the whole full route with the Jets.
And you get, not lucky, but I mean, it makes sense with what you were saying before. Sam Darnold, getting him there for $5,000, definitely makes McCaffrey that much more affordable. You know, and I'm curious to see which receiver you're targeting. I have an idea, but who are you thinking next at the running back position?
So with running back, there's been a few little injuries and a few little things that kind of made it, okay, let's go a little cheaper because kind of everybody's healthy. The person I'm actually leaning towards is Raheem Mostert for $5,800.
Okay.
The Lions are just awful. And that 49ers run blocking this past weekend looked amazing. And Raheem Mostert looked really good against, I know it was the Raiders and it was whatever, but the Lions are going to be one of those teams where I could see Mostert kind of being the one to break off that huge run.
Suck.
And the reality is like, I know Trey Sermon has been the rookie that everybody's like excited about, problem with Trey Sermon is he hasn't broken tackles at all in the preseason. Like, he hasn't done any of it. And I disagree that Darnold did not look good last week.
Homer.
The only thing he didn't look he didn't look good when he snapped the ball and the guy was hitting him as he caught the snap. But other than that, he looked fine. He ran the offense well.
You get the rust off in the preseason. That's what it's for. But here we are.
Carolina.
So we got for a little under 5,000 on an average remaining here. We are to the wide receivers, starting 3. Do we want to get that stack out of the way that you had hinted at? Which one of the Panthers wide receivers here do you feel is the best fit? I know this has kind of been a talking point just in general in fantasy and who the best value is. I don't, Jackal, who are you thinking here?
Well, so I was going to ask a question. So when you typically do your lineup, right? Do you like to do it the way we're doing it, or do you fill in as you go? Like, you'll go quarterback, tight end, running wide receiver, or do you go right down the gamut because you have that strategy in mind when you're doing this? I'll
usually start and throw the defense in there, just so I kind of know like where the real average remaining is, because that 5,000 changes drastically if we go throw Atlanta's defense in there.
So should we skip over
That's
here?
That's why I was curious.
I wouldn't mind to throw in Atlanta's defense
because I was just looking to see what
All right, there we go. Boom.
I wanted to see
55.
54, 55. So this is where
who are you thinking here, Jordan? Would you go right to the Carolina wide receivers, or would you pick somebody knowing that you're going to go value on the wide receiver, within your stack?
So the person I would go here is just to finish off the Carolina stack, and is actually going to be Robbie Anderson with 5,700.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's just one of those weird narratives where revenge game, whatever you want to call it. Robbie and Sam Darnold have actually played meaningful snaps together, and Sam has thrown touchdowns to Robbie Anderson, which is not many receivers can say they call it a touchdown from Sam Darnold, but he's one of them. That's the important part. And Robbie Anderson last year, week 1, absolutely was a huge part of the game plan. And with the Jets, they play a lot of the cover 2 and with Robert Saleh over there. And it's going to be an awful cover 2 because they don't have the safeties to run it or the DBs. And for week 1, Mac Jones. I'll take Mac Jones over Trevor Lawrence. I know Mac Jones is going up against the Dolphins, and he's, the Dolphins defense was so spectacular last year. I'm going to put quotations marks around it, because if you actually go dive into the numbers, Derek Carr went for 27 DraftKings points. Josh Allen killed them. Kyler killed them. They were good against Joe Flacco and the Jets. They were good against the Bengals with Brandon Allen. Like, their numbers are super inflated, and I understand that they have good corners. But the middle of the field's open, and Mac Jones this preseason was throwing in the middle of the field with confidence. Like, he was looking off linebackers, and Jerome Baker's not good. Like, I don't care what anybody says.
It makes me feel good about those tight ends over in New England.
Yes. Like, Jonnu Smith is a guy, Kendrick Bourne. I think Mac Jones is going to run it's going to be an offense that pisses you off, because if the Dolphins go and engage 8 when blitz the house and leave their corners on islands, Mac Jones is smart enough to put a blitz protection, and then James White just leaks out of the backfield, just whatever, dumps it off and gets 10 yards. And if anybody knows a Brian Flores defense best, it's Bill Belichick.
Already learned it. Yeah.
As we all know, even just the track record of former Belichick prodigies against Belichick is not too great, with the exception of I'm going to blank on his name now. Mike Vrabel in Tennessee, being really the lone card
Vrabel
there.
Threatened to beat him up or something, and he got a fucking monster.
Scare me. All right, so second wide receiver here.
So the next team that's going to be a popular matchup, and it's week 1, and I'm hoping this dude just gets off of COVID beforehand, but it's going to be AJ Brown. I know Julio Jones is kind of the guy that is a little cheaper, but AJ Brown's been with Tannehill, and the Cardinals corners are just awful. They are bad.
It's amazing they've spent zero time trying to improve that position.
Yeah.
Why would you? Makes no freaking sense. Who do you think, just speaking of AJ Brown and in Julio, in your opinion, Jordan, who do you see having the most benefit of Julio's addition? I mean, we could talk about Derrick Henry, but just with respect to the receivers, who do you see having the better fantasy year?
I think AJ Brown's going to be more consistent. I think that's what his uptake is going to be in. So at yards per catch, that's been at like 18 or 20 for the last 2 years, is going to go down. But with Julio Jones, I think Julio Jones is going to be the guy that wins you 5 weeks because he gets 20 plus points, while AJ Brown is a lot of the weeks getting you the 12 to 14 and then having that blow up 3 to 4 times of 20 to 30 points. Because, that offense with fully healthy, it's going to be a nightmare to match up against. And I know Tennessee's defense was abysmal last year with what they had, but Janoris Jenkins comes over and he's a man-to-man corner that can actually keep up with D-Hop week 1, because I was going to go with the run it back stack. The receiver, I think, is actually going to be just like a PPR just machine for week 1. It's going to be Rondale Moore. I think he's the way they used him in preseason. A lot of people
like him, yeah.
I think he can get 5 to 6 catches because I don't believe in AJ Green and I don't think Christian Kirk's good. I like the run it back with the Rondale Moore for extremely cheap.
What's he going for? Yeah, I
think he's like 30.
Oh, that's a great.
He might be even 3K.
Are we adding him in here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh wow. So then you can actually.
I gotta go down the list.
So now you got.
He's 3K. You might want to search his name.
Oh my god.
He's as cheap as it gets.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to search because I don't see him.
Yeah,
and go. This is why you're the prodigy, Jordan. This is why we're. This is good stuff right here.
There he is. All right.
It looks like the way they're utilizing him in the preseason was a lot of motion, just little things. And if you're they throw screens a ton, they can't throw screens to DeAndre Hopkins and expect Rondale Moore to block. That's just not going to go well. But if they do it the other way, it makes a little sense. And that's just a game that has a high point total and is going to be a very popular stack.
All right.
I love Kyler Murray this year, but anyway, so.
Yeah. I think
everybody does, but I'm just super pumped.
Well, not only that, but I do agree with you. I think he does take that next step. Which again, if he didn't get injured last year, I'm hoping that he can just maintain that healthy play. Because we all saw what happened last year with him down the stretch, and the Cardinals kind of folding up there with a chance at the playoffs. Tight end.
Got some bread here.
Mm-hmm. There's some. I don't know if I should scroll down further. There's one name on this list. I'm kind of surprised he's as low as he is.
I know who it is.
Who?
Jared Cook.
No,
that's your guy.
He is. Kyle Pitts at 4,400 seems low. Am I wrong or no?
Okay.
No, you're right. I have a few tight ends that I'm looking to try to pivot to, but it's so hard on DraftKings. FanDuel, Kyle Pitts is 6K.
Really?
DraftKings, he's 44. And the difference in salary for the two is a little bit, but Kyle Pitts is the third most expensive tight end on FanDuel, and
that's crazy.
He's not that priced, and I don't like Calvin Ridley week 1. I love Kyle Pitts.
He gets that ball in his hand.
He seems like the person to just Arthur Smith has a bunch of diabolical things lined up for him, but on top of it, Philly's linebackers are so bad. They are
bigger than all of them anyway. Jesus Christ.
And you can't. Darius Slay matched up with DK Metcalf last year. And Metcalf went for 11 for 160 and was telling him he's little. You should look up that Darius Slay comments, because Metcalf from the first snap was yelling at Darius Slay saying he's too little to guard him and to just bully him.
Wasn't lying.
The whole game.
No.
So I think Kyle Pitts is going to be the victory lap that is early on in the season that people are going to take. And I don't normally like to play a lot of rookies, but the way that this kind of is working out, I do like Kyle Pitts at his price.
See, that's a thing of the past too. I feel like rookies are just that much more. There's so many more skilled rookies now, just that are making those impacts. That's just the trend. Wide receivers and whatever. But anyway,
so we have 7,500 left. the idiot that I am always like, oh, I'll just get a $7,500 player. I'm sure you don't think that way.
No.
But there's some decent names
Yeah.
at the 7,500 mark and going down.
Against Washington, though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting list here.
Yes.
Would
to
you double
fill out
up
the
receivers like Julio Jones and AJ Brown?
I wouldn't like to do that with the
Okay.
current lineup structure because of not having Tannehill. For
Gotcha.
AJ and Julio to
absolutely.
hit that value, I'm assuming both of them score, and I'm assuming one of them's got to go for over 100. And Tannehill in that type of scenario was probably just balling out. The player I actually like at this price range is James Robinson. He's 6,400. He's against a pretty bad, a really bad Houston team. And I know they've looked awful in the preseason, but with that being said, it's definitely something I'm like, this is way too cheap, and he's going to get 20 to 25 touches. Like, if he doesn't, then I'll adjust. But Darrell Bevel will give him a big role in that offense, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, just for the sheer fact that Carlos Hyde. Urban Meyer scares me as a coach. I think he scares a lot of people. Yeah. As a coach and what he just might do. There's already been rumblings that there's some players upset with how he's kind of running the team and setting things up. And so that gives some thought of, okay, is he really giving some playing time to people who may not necessarily deserve it? But it's Carlos Hyde. Like, he's a husk of what he used to be.
We'll bring in Frank Gore.
More or less. But, a year ago, James Robinson had, I believe it was like an 85% team share of rushing opportunities, which is absurd on any level. But now he has a quarterback that can actually throw the ball, can actually extend plays out of the pocket, and really just open up that offense to the point where he's not seeing a stacked box on his rushing attempts. I'm also very biased. He's my hometown guy out of Rockford, Illinois.
Okay.
However, I agree with you here. Houston, it's hard to say anything nice about Houston. Just plain and simple.
They have a football team. That's cool.
and I will say, this is definitely a turn-up build type of lineup. Don't try to go throw this in cash. This is not. Do not use this in a cash game build, because it's.
I just put wait. What? Fuck Jordan. Steven, what is going on? You told me.
Again, this is a tournament lineup because you're getting low owners or low rostership from. You got most likely Sam Darnold's not going to come in at anywhere near 8%, maybe probably 5%. Rondale Moore won't touch 4%. Kyle Pitts is going to be pretty high roster. James Robinson, I'm assuming, will get a decent amount, but the Falcons won't. They will get less than probably 8% as well. Robbie Anderson won't as well, and AJ Brown will get a pretty good amount, and so will Mostert. But I don't think people are going to fit McCaffrey in as much as they should, because anytime McCaffrey is not 10K, you play him. That's been my rule for the last 2-3 years. Like last year, the week he came back, he was priced 9,400, and Dalvin was 93. And I put this is like one of those bad beat stories where I was playing the 20 entry $3 lineups, and I made 20 lineups, and all my lineups had Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey in it, like every single one. And going
happy.
No, I had them both, but the problem is I was putting up shutters because there's a hurricane coming, and I was switching, and I wanted to put a little bit of Derrick Henry in the 20 entries, and my bigger lineups, which was the it's a 3-entry, $150 per lineup contest. I wanted those to be sure with McCaffrey and Dalvin. Put Derrick Henry in 2 of those instead of having Dalvin and McCaffrey like I did. So Dalvin and McCaffrey both scored 40 that week. The next closest running back scored 17. So in my 20 entries that were $3 each, it was $60 to $600. And I think it was all of them made the money. Every single lineup made the money, which was not supposed to happen in a tournament.
Wow.
And 7 of them would have won first place in my bigger entries because the person I also ran it back, ran it back, but like have little knowledge of is I played Drew Lock and Jerry Jeudy so I could afford this. And it was against the Falcons. And I knew the narrative that because I mean, my high school, the Jerry actually high school Jerry Jeudy, Calvin Ridley, and Riley Ridley and Greg Russo. So when they played each other, they've always joked around that they were going to go one up each other. So Calvin was hurt at the time, but Jerry's going to go ball on Calvin's team just off of narrative of just like showing up his friend almost. Like they always talked and joked about it. And Jerry went for like 150 and 2 touchdowns. It was a lot of garbage time stuff, but Drew Lock also ran for like 60 yards. It was a ridiculous week where I would have won a lot more money. I probably would have gotten the content a lot sooner.
Better late than never.
Oh yeah, no. This year I'm hoping to win someone some money. I mean, I've joked around with the guys in the chats that we've had, and I've said it would be cool to have one of you like, hey Jordan, you just paid for a trip to Disney with the family. Like you just helped 1 year of tuition. Like that would be such a cool thing to me personally.
Well, maybe with this we can set up one of those big check ceremonies with Children's Miracle Network. That would be awesome. Pretty fantastic in itself. It is officially entered in and ready to roll. So there it is.
It just told us what you did a daily fantasy lineup today. What is that? What it said?
So we're the one idiot that didn't like just hit the reserve button. We're actually just like submitting the lineup now. I'm just gonna have to remember to check on it to make sure everybody's actually playing.
If Tannehill does not, if Tannehill's got COVID, we are taking that Arizona game out of our
wiping completely.
Now, can you go back and edit before
Yes, you can edit. So the fun part about it is we actually don't have anybody playing at 4:00, which is pretty funny. But if you're in your lineup and say, make sure to never have a 4:00 guy in your running back spot if you can put him in your flex, because I ran into it last year where
COVID,
if someone gets ruled out for COVID, because that can happen at any given moment, you are able to switch that guy, and you want to leave the roster flexibility. Say you're playing Alvin Kamara, he's on a 4 p.m. slate, and he gets ruled out. You could switch that to Travis Kelce if you money wise. So instead of having to play like another running back, because sometimes the 4 p.m. games you're looking at, you're like, why is Raheem Mostert? Why am I now saving $3,000 in salary? Like that's not it's not fun.
Again, just twist the knife just a little bit more in terms of
today, Jordan. Thank you.
Hey, no problem. I mean, there's a few people I recommend. Matt Gajewski, he's over at Awesomeo. He does college football stuff, and TJ Hernandez is an awesome cash game player with 4 for 4. And there's few people that I truly, if anybody ever asked me, hey, these are the guys that kind of got me started into like getting where I'm at. And I mean, I've learned a lot of things. I'm always open to and answer questions if you just reach out to me in DMs. And I mean, don't it's a gamble. And always got to remember to have fun with it. Never play more than you can't afford to lose. I've never done it. I started with $2, and I luckily and kind of was originally a little skill where I was 18 years old at a $2 Monday to Thursday lineup. Cameron Artis-Payne and Jaquiz Rogers were my running backs.
These two mother effers. Holy shit.
And it was $2, 127,000 people, and I came in second for $4,000. And that was the start to me getting more addicted into this. And then I was actually originally a 2-game slate player. So like I was only good on those Sunday night, Monday night games. I was awful on the whole slate. But
that's awesome.
After some time, I switched over to a few main slate, and then I got into the only thing I haven't really mastered, I guess, is the single game. Single game, I'm great, but I mean, it's just I do a lot of research, and sometimes it's just, hey, watch film and screw the research. Like it's just it's stupid. The projections don't tell you anything. Like
you heard it here first.
Numbers don't play. Numbers don't play the games, you know.
No. I mean, week one, you guys, Matt Nagy, 3 years ago. I wish I had a bigger bankroll and I was playing more. You guys were playing the Washington football team at the time, and the football team, Landon Collins is still their starting safety, and I noticed in film the same route from a slot, just deep route, was killing them. So I played Taylor Gabriel in every lineup, and he caught 3 touchdowns. He was 3% owned as a flex, or he's 3% owned as a captain and like 17% owned as a flex. And I played him as a captain in 3 of my lineups. So I was up at the top until Paul Richardson scored a touchdown to end the game. And I was winning about, I would say about 125K, and I knocked down to like $125 or $300, something like that.
Like that's the pain I don't think I can handle on a weekly basis.
That makes me hurt. Shit.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure Shane's recording this.
You just become numb after a while, right?
It's gotta be awful.
I mean, yeah, no, I'm excited. It's like, it's so funny because, I mean, not funny, but it's bad in a sense of now I'm to the point where like I was Patriots defense against Justin Herbert last year didn't go for 30. I would have come in first, fourth, and like fifth in my 3-entry max, and that would have been about probably 145K. But they went for 35, and I was the only person in the top 50 without them. And I was hanging out, and I was finishing fourth, and it was the craziest stretch where I was winning 40 grand. And it was Darren Waller day. I was winning 40 grand, and then I was losing because someone got a point or 0.1, and I was down 0.5. And Jared Goff, 4th and 1 on the 4 p.m. slate, only game on. They decide QB sneak it. He gets 2 yards, 2 yards. I was down 0.1. He gets 2 yards, so he gets 0.2. I pass that guy. I'm winning 40K. He takes a knee, loses a yard. I tie with the dude. So me and him get 27 grand. I was like, I don't even know. I didn't deserve it.
No, that's the stuff that infuriates me. I don't think a kneel should count as a lost yard. No, I think that's bull. I don't understand why that's a thing. It's the same thing. This has infuriated me to no end as it being a stat in fantasy. Rushing attempts should not be a stat in fantasy. I don't care who it is. I don't care who you're talking about, because they count kneels by quarterbacks as a rushing attempt. It's not a rushing attempt. He's kneeling the damn ball. And I have lost games on that sole fact, watching one guy take 3 straight kneels, and here's a 1.5 to somebody, and I lose by 1/4 of a point. It's bullshit. I hate it, and I don't want to think about it. I'm getting fired up.
The rant by Stephen and Jackle.
Just to put it a little, dagger in a little bit, for college football, when you get sacked, it's negative rushing yards to the quarterback.
That, I think, is okay.
That's a real stat. So, like, when you look at rushing totals for Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, just remember, every time they've been sacked, that takes away for their rushing yards.
Right.
So, like, that's a no. For me as a college football DFS guy, because I also play that, no shot I'm doing that. I hate it. It's like if you play, like, because, I mean, ECU's on the slate, and, like, Holton Ayers is their quarterback, and he basically is, we call him the AAC TiVo, because all he does is just like run around and just sling it, and just being like, he's not really athletic, but he definitely looks like he tries, like TiVo-esque in the sense of like just a guy. Yeah, gotcha. He just like runs into people, but he gets rushing yards. And I had a slate where he got negative 45 rushing yards on back-to-back plays because of sacks. And it knocked me from like profiting like $40-50 to losing like $40-50. And I'm like, this dude just really took like 4 points away from me because of sacks. Like I couldn't believe it. It is what it is. College football is a blast. I don't recommend that, but I do recommend if you want to throw away $15, go for it. It's so fun. It makes the
Saturday fun.
Oh
A
yeah,
little bit
no.
more volatile, to say the
There it
least.
is.
Well, before we wrap things up here, obviously want to give you a chance to plug everything that you have
Please.
going on, where people can find you, and all these stats. I know there's a lot of them coming this year with these projects that you've been working on. So where can people find you?
So you'll get my written content for 4for4.com, and that will be the GPP. I'll be tackling FanDuel and DraftKings. That's going to be where my work kind of goes. I usually build a player pool, which is something I didn't mention, I forgot to. But player pool to get that I'm going to be giving away on that article, where it'll tell you exactly the players I'm considering. With Awesomeo on Tuesdays, we'll be doing, I believe, a strategy type of show where it's just generic, but it's like, how are you looking at this type of slate coming up and different things? Dave Logaran and I forgot the other co-host will be coming on with us, but that'll be on Tuesdays. And then Rumboyz, you'll see a video pop out sometime during the week. And other than that, no, you guys can catch me on Twitter, Jordan Vanek DFS. If you have any questions, just reach out. That's where you'll find me.
Great. Sounds good. We appreciate everything you've shared with us here. Like we said, hopefully getting some money here for Children's Miracle Network with that lineup. It's a long shot, but hey, like we said, got to pay. You got to
And if you don't play, and if you lose, contact Jordan, DM him, and he'll reimburse you for your losses. He said that earlier.
You lost for the children.
Hey, Steven, I will be changing that lineup if my opinion changes. I will be sending you a lineup.
Hey, you are our expert.
Hey, that's
so
what
please.
we're here for.
Exactly.
You got my info, man. You got my info.
I love it.
It's like then I see Steven on
Careful
his
what you just
personal
walked
account.
into, Jordan.
Steven just like tied with me in first place.
You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.
That's how that works. But hey, like I said, at least it's for a good cause.
Absolutely.
Along the way. And yeah, we'll definitely have some fun with it. And again, would love to have you back again later this season and talk some more DFS fun and everything else under the sun in fantasy. So again, appreciate your time, and thanks for hopping on.
Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
All right, you as well. Take care.
Later, bud.
Yeah.
So again, just fantastic stuff from Jordan.
My brain hurts. I learned a lot.
as we're slowly growing, it's not legal out in your neck of the woods anymore, I don't think.
No, daily fantasy is. It's the only legal. Okay. Yeah, so I can do the FanDuel, and which I do, DraftKings and FanDuel. But we, hopefully they're talking, Mass, New York, everybody else is doing it around us. They just legalize weed out here, so it's like we seem to be like we're always the next step. So that's where we are right now. It sounds like in the next couple of years. I mean, our governor needs to. They call us.
Hurry it up.
What is
Let's
it?
go.
We tax
Come
everything
on.
out here in Connecticut. So
hey, it's like Illinois. It's like the Illinois of the East.
We're just trying to figure out who's going to run it out here, the casinos or the government. And that's how So
sounds accurate.
Sounds like a fun conversation. Accurate. Yeah, I should be careful what I say. I don't know who's listening.
They're watching.
Hey.
Everything is bugged. They're a part of our audience. Subscribing to TTNL.
That's right.
Well, that's going to do it here for One Up Fantasy tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. It was a heck of a show. Had plenty to talk about. Next week, the first round of games is here. We'll be talking glitches and cheat codes. We'll be talking speed runs, all of our fun games that we have along the way. Oh, let's go.
I'm excited. Blood's flowing. I got a draft every day. Let's see. Tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, 2 on Saturday, and then I have 1 on my anniversary. So it's going to be.
You're playing with fire, man.
Oh,
you're
man,
playing
I'm fucked.
With fire.
It's definitely on the phone in the background type of shit. So we'll see what happens.
You're pulling that DJ Khaled. Another one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounds
she'll be
about
pleased.
right,
You know how it goes.
Yeah, we're a bunch of degenerates over here, but hey, it's all for a good.
Let's end up with a show, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're just here to vent it all out when we're not in draft rooms for the next week. I guess that's the best way to put it. But we will be here same time, same place next Tuesday night at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central for a brand new episode of One Up Fantasy. For Chris Jackle, I'm Stephen Johnson. Thank you for watching this evening, and we will talk to you next week. Have a good night, everybody.
Having a good night.